here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the channel's version of a crafty corner. In today's video, we are going to be upcycling a pre-existing spiral bound sketchbook, turning this into this. So in this video, I'm going to be repurposing a spiral bound sketchbook. This is actually a Grumbacher 140-pound cold press acid free spiral bound watercolor sketchbook with removable pages. You guys may have seen me use these on the channel before. Now, I purchased this at Walmart. It comes with two covers. It has the regular Grumbacher watercolor cover, and then it has a little instructional cover which shows you how to remove and reinsert the removable watercolor papers that come inside the pad. And I decided that I wanted to do a project today where, you know, I could show you guys how you could upcycle your very own pre-existing spiral bound notebooks without having to create one from scratch. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to have some sewing going on. We're going to be creating our very own pattern paper for the inside where we paint this castle. And I will go ahead and let you guys know that this video is not edited like my normal crafting videos. This one is going to actually have time lapse to it. But hopefully you will still be able to pick up on the gist of everything that I did throughout the entire video that's about to come up. And you'll see how easy it is to take something that you already have, put a few minutes into upcycling it and turning it into something beautiful and usable to look at over and over. And the great thing is that they still make these sketchbooks, so as I run out of paper, I can just buy another one and then insert those pages inside this one, which is why I love that insert removable watercolor page spiral bound notebook idea by Grumbacher. I think they were really onto something with this. So without further ado, let's jump into the video and let me show you how I created this. To start off, I removed the two front covers as well as the very back cover from the spiral. Now these you actually have to take off of the spiral because they're not removable like the inside watercolor pages for this spiral bound sketchbook is. So then I grabbed a pad of pattern paper that I've had for over a year now. I do not know why it's still sitting around like a lot of other ephemera and pattern papers that I needed to get used up. It's got this really whimsical, fantasy, magical knights and magic theme to the pad. So I went through and I found a couple of pieces of pattern paper that I felt went together. The first one sort of had a mosaic strip on it. And then I got to thinking, okay, mosaic strip, stained glass. Typically you can get a knight. And that's why you saw me grab those two pieces of pattern paper. One of them having that mosaic rosy look to it. The other one actually being an image of the knight, which I would use as the main cover. So I cut off the mosaic part of the pattern paper and made sure that it was going to fit over the first flap, and it did. And then I just cut the other end of that paper, or the back of that paper, to size to match the mosaic strip. So I'm grabbing some, this is Scotch Create, a really, really great stick glue. Seems almost like a cement. And I'm going to use that to just glue the mosaic strip down on the top of that first cover. And that first cover is basically like the instructions on how you remove and then replace the actual watercolor pages that are in this Grumbacher spiral bound sketchbook. So after I got that glued down, I grabbed hole puncher, and I'm going down and repunching the holes through the piece that I actually glued to the cover, or the initial cover. Or we're just going to call this one the small cover, because there's two covers to the sketchbook. And then I'm going to add glue to the back side, and then we're going to be gluing on the back of that panel to cover it. So we have completely encased that little instructional leaflet that was on the front of the book. I'm just going to make sure that everything is, kind of lined up the best it could be. And then I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes into that particular paper as well. So making sure that I punch the holes in the first paper, the first pattern paper that I used on the front, before encasing the whole thing. That way I can make sure I see the holes. I'm sure you guys were able to follow that though. And I didn't really use like Fabrifix or Fabri-Tac or like silicone based glue to hold this down, because I am going to actually be sewing around the edges, which I've already done at this point. And then there you saw I actually attached it back to the spiral just so we could see what it would look like. Now here, I've already decided that I was going to cover the front of this big cover with the night pattern paper that we pulled from the pattern pack. But I needed to cover the back. And to cover the back of it, I was going to make my own pattern paper, and I decided that I would let it be an original art piece. So I grabbed, I think it's an 11 by 15, 140 pound cold press watercolor block by Paul Rubens. Paper that I've had for a while. I don't really like this paper. There's something funny about either the sizing or maybe the glue. Maybe it's just this particular pad, but I decided that I would use it up in craft projects. So basically I laid that main cover down and, outlined it. And then to the outline, I'm going to add a line inside, maybe about half an inch in from each side. That way we're kind of creating a frame around what I'm actually going to be doing. And I decided that I would paint a castle because I felt like it would flow with the night in the mosaic glass theme, kind of keeping it all fantasy and medieval. So I sketched out a castle on some sketch paper, and then I transferred it on before turning on the camera in order to show you guys the painting demo. Now here what I'm doing is using Art Whale Gouache in order to paint this. Now you guys may have already seen the finished product and like the Art Whale review, because if I'm not mistaken, it comes out before this actual crafting video does. But in the background is really watery washes of ultramarine and cobalt, and then I mixed ultramarine and scarlet together in order to get that purple tint, which is splattered in the background. Then I went in to start working on the landscape itself, which are mixtures of yellow ochre, burnt sienna, sap green. And then of course you see me using my fine liner to go in, because I decided to make this an ink and wash once I had gotten to a certain point. And I felt like it was going to help the details of it stand out a little bit more. And it was just going to be, I don't know, the ink and wash idea seemed to have, in my head, be something that was going to go better with the whole journal idea. So after the foreground was dry, I went back in with a more saturated wash of that gouache, more gouache, a lot less water, in order to just start building body and opacity to the foreground, so that, it looked like it had richness to it. Then I decided to go in and start painting the castle, which is really just like a watered down mixture of yellow ochre, burnt sienna. I think it may be just a small hint of ultramarine blue in that mixture. But I was really trying to keep it bricky, orangey, yellowish looking. So I painted on that first layer and then gave it time to dry being sure to keep a more saturated, heavier consistency towards what would be the shadow side of the castle. Jumped back over to the foreground where we're working on the land and painted in those little bushes that are kind of around the castle. And now I'm using a darker tint, a darker shade, sorry, darker shade of that brick color in order to lay it against the shadow sides. Switched over to painting the roof here, which is being done with burnt sienna and ultramarine, a lot more burnt sienna than ultramarine, because I really wanted to have a brownish red tone, but still have enough yellow in it to help match and keep harmony throughout the composition. Darken that roof color up and paint it in the shadow side. Darken the brick color even more and paint it in the shadow side. So that's what you see me doing. I'm trying to make sure that the castle has sort of a 3D dimensional feel, being sure to try to keep it dark in all those areas where shadow will be hitting the wall. Now the texture in the roof, just kind of to emulate those bricks, I was really just kind of hitting with a detail brush, just doing dashes all around. It turned out pretty well, and I moved on to doing like grasses in the foreground with some sap green, and then some sap green with black to give me a darker green to work with. I even used green fine liners to add in grasses and trees in the foreground, framing it, and because I want it to look like it's in an actual frame, which you're going to see in a minute. Now the texture on the castle was done just like the texture on the roof. Just kind of took my brush and, well, on the roof they were dashes. On the actual castle wall, there were dots, just to give sort of the impression of a different type of brick between the roof and the castle wall. So yeah, now you see I've removed that tape and painted, basically just painting in that frame that I originally drew in black, because the whole object is to remove this from the block and cut it down so that it'll be a piece of pattern paper that's big enough to fit the opposite side of the Grumbacher cover. So here I am just taking my fine liners and drawing some wood detailing into that frame, adding in where the wood would meet, and then I'm going to hack it off so that it becomes pattern paper so that we can jump back over to actually constructing and putting together the journal. I really enjoyed this. It was really cool. And those gouache paints by Paul Rubens are quite a hybrid. I can't wait to get around to the review for those, because those are the watercolors that I was using. Now here what you see me doing is I am taking the night pattern paper that originally chose, and I'm just cutting it down so that it's going to fit the front of this cover. And just like I did with the smaller cover, I'm using my glue stick, and here I'm actually using a Fabrifix. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm not going to sew all the way around all four corners. I'm only going to sew around the ends that do not actually have the holes in it. So we got that fixed on, or I got that fixed on, and then I took my brayer and made sure that it was flat and laying down, took the hole puncher and punched in the holes, and now I'm going to actually cover the back of it with the painting that we just finished doing with our Paul Rubens hybrid gouache paints, and I'm just going to get that covered. And actually, I didn't realize that the painting was a little bit bigger than the actual cover. So I am going to have to grab some scissors to trim that up a little bit just to get it even. And then after that, I don't know why I can't talk all of a sudden. I'm going to grab that hole puncher, and then I'm going to just go down and add the holes into the opposite side. And it's going to be so cool to me. I love the way that turned out as the second cover. So now it's time to move on to doing the actual back cover. Now for this, I just took the offcuts from all of the pattern papers that I used for the front cover and kind of just created a pattern paper for the back cover. So as you can see, that's the actual back, like the the backing board for the Grumbacher pad. I didn't try to cover it or anything. I just took my offcuts of the pattern paper from the front and literally started gluing it down to just make a pattern paper directly onto that backing, which actually was kind of fun and cool all at the same time. It was a great way to use up the scraps without having to pull out any more pattern paper and cutting it down just to do this particular part of the project. So once that was all glued down and braided down to make sure that it was good and secure, I grabbed the hole puncher again, and now I'm just punching the holes into the part of the paper that originally covered it. Now this that you see me using now is a pocket that I made out of coffee dyed paper. It's basically stencil stained coffee paper that I made. And, you know, if you guys want to see that, let me know in the comment sections and I'll show you guys how I did that. And then I took the offcuts from that particular pocket and sort of made a pocket to go along the very front cover. So I glued those cutoffs down onto, what's that, file folder, and then cut it out. And then I'm actually going to take that piece and trim it down to fit that smaller cover the way it needs to. And then I'm going to glue it on as a pocket. Now, I'm probably going to end up putting a really thin bookmark in there before it's all said and done. But I just thought it was a cute little addition to the front. So I cut in a pocket hole and inked around it, threw a little bird stamp on it because I thought it was cute. And then I'm going to actually glue that down to the very front cover as a pocket. And you'll see me adding glue to the inside just to make sure everything stays good and secure. I always want to make sure that everything is glued, especially when you're not sewing. You want to make sure it's glued all the way down to the end. And you want to try to use a glue that you know is going to hold for a while, not like a glue stick. So now it's time to put it all back onto the spiral. And here we have it. And here we are, my friends. We have created, or should I say upcycled, this spiral bound notebook. Really quickly, I'm just going to go through it once more so you can see all of the details of what was done before we wrap this crafting video up. Again, I know it was a little different on the editing from normal, but hopefully you guys still enjoyed it. So we have the very first cover, which was the one that had the instructions on it. We covered the front of that with the mosaic piece that we cut from the first piece of pattern paper. Then using what was left over, we made the paneling for the back and encased the original short cover inside the front and the back of the pattern paper. Sewed around and then used a hole puncher to punch out the hole so it can be reinserted onto the spiral. The front of this is the offcut of some coffee stenciled paper that was used to make a pocket for the back cover. Those offcuts were used to make the pocket for this front cover. And it's just big enough to get like a tag or a bookmark or something in there. I think it'll be really cool to store on the front. Now, I didn't put anything on the inside here because I haven't decided whether I want to put writing or ephemera or what I want to put right there yet, but maybe pictures or something, I don't know. And then that mosaic cover leads to the actual knight, which was used out of the pattern pack to cover the front. Then of course it's sewn around after both the front and the back panel were put on. Again, the holes were punched so it could be reinserted. And the back of that panel is the actual painting that we did today. Now, this was done with Art Whale Gouache, about 95%. The other 5% of it may have been just a touch of the Paul Rubens Gouache paints. I think I said in the video as I was doing the voiceover, I may have mentioned the Gouache paints 2 or 3 times, but I don't want to give the impression that that was the main product used, because 95% of this entire piece was done with the Art Whale Jelly Gouache set, which, as I said in the actual demo, does have a review that is more than likely already premiered on the channel. But you did get to see this in the review video because I showed the artwork that I did. And as you can see, this is that removable spiral bound book that I was telling you guys about. It has those removable pages with the tabs that allows it to be reinserted. Just take a few of them out there, see? And I think this is such a neat design. And the great thing about it is I can always buy additional spiral bound books, take off the front and the back cover, put them to the side to do something else with them, and then take the papers from that book and insert them into this one to continue to add to it. So it could be an ever-growing project, which I think is really, really cool. I wish I could find like the puncher that makes these insertable leaflets. I guess maybe these insertable pages, I guess I'll look around on Amazon, maybe on AliExpress, and see if I can find the puncher that you edge the paper with that allows you to make it like these insertable pages. I think that would be really cool. That way I can add other types of pages to it as well. And then of course we have the back cover, which I didn't really do too much to. The very back was left blank and simple. I may stamp something on the back of there, I may not. But for the inside of that, we use the offcuts from this pattern paper and this pattern paper, and we basically just build the pattern paper on the back. I just glued those down and punched the holes in there. Now this is the coffee stencil dyed paper. This is just like regular copying paper that I coffee dyed, and then I actually coffee dyed or I stenciled or stained a stencil on top of it. And like I said in the video, if you guys want to know how I create something like this, let me know in the video description, the comment section, I'm sorry, and I'll be happy to. So I glued that down onto file folder, sewed around it, put a little punch to make it look like a pocket, inked around it, and then sewed it down onto that. And that's just a straight board, not too much covering at all. And that's now a big insertable pocket for me to keep different things in, which I think is really cool. And then of course the offcuts from that was used to make the pocket for the very front. And guys, there you have it. I think that's pretty cool for upcycling. I know it was a different type of crafting video, and it was a different type of editing for the crafting video. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it anyway. And if you did, seeing, hearing, or liking anything, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel or returning and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscription button and that notification bell so you'll know when all the new content comes out. Share the video. Maybe someone else would love to see how to upcycle one of their spiral bound books. Comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this is a project that interests you or something that you might actually give a try, because I think it's pretty fun and I had fun doing it without any doubt, guys. You can hit the video description for all of the relevant links. Facebook group, the most recommended product list, Etsy and Patreon in case you guys decide to support. Great things going on Patreon. Lots of neat items in the Etsy shop, which I'm about to start uploading some more things in there shortly. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a cool crafting video. We're diving back into getting crafting videos up alongside our art videos. So guys, stay tuned for that. And remember, as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting and crafting.